Hello friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. We've got another Loar mandolin that's in for a full meal deal setup. Well, wait a minute. I think this connects to this, I think. We might have to do something before we can do the full meal deal setup on this one. I promise you, my critics say I break these things off camera. I promise you I didn't break this off camera. People have more fun than anybody. Okay, well, there you go. That's what we got. This also has a pickup drilled with a wire drilled through the top of the board there, so that this doesn't come off easily. Kind of wished it did, but I don't know if I want to get into that mess. I just don't like stuff like that flopping around when I'm working on an instrument. But I think that's the least of my problems right now. There's not a lot left here, guys. Look at the end of that. There's just not a lot of meat here. That's one of the problems with putting in a truss rod. I don't think all mandolins really need a truss rod, if you really want to know the truth. If they're built right, I don't think they necessarily have to have one. I didn't put one in a lot of my mandolins. I would say over half of them don't have a truss rod. And I've never had a problem. But I laminate the necks, and that lamination keeps the neck real stiff. See, when the neck is got a certain stiffness to it, and then you cut that deep groove all the way through it. Well, you just took away 2/3 of the stiffness by doing that. So, and it's a short neck. So, mandolin necks, in my opinion, don't really need a truss rod. They mostly have them. That's just my opinion, my commentary. I know everybody's going to say, well, how do you adjust the, underbow and all that? Well, like I said, I laminate mine. I don't have any problem with mine. But in this case, they cut away almost all the meat to put that truss rod in there. I mean, there's very little meat left. And you're expecting that to hold up. Well, you just let that fall one time, just like that, and it's going to break it off of there. And I would assume that's what happened here, or maybe it was a bigger fall than that, but either way, it broke. My charge is figure out how to fix it. I like a challenge, don't get me wrong. But I generally like a challenge that is possible to fix. I'm not sure this is possible. Oh, anything's possible. It really is. I know I can fix it. It's just how deep do you have to go to fix it? That's the problem. At that point, then you got to say, is it worth fixing? I had that video on not worth fixing, but there's always a point of diminishing returns on anything. So, is this worth fixing? I think so. I think I can fix it at a reasonable amount of time and reasonable cost, but we won't know that till we get into it a little deeper. I may have to do a huge scarf joint, or who knows what we'll have to do to fix this, because ordinarily I say just glue them right back and they'll be fine, but ordinarily there's some wood there to glue to, and in this particular case there's very little of that. So, we'll just take it as we get to it here. I'm trying to get the ferrules out of this. Now, they are really tight. I just so happen to have a bunch of what they call transfer punches. I have them in every size. They have a little tiny point on the end so that you can transfer the like if you're going to drill a hole and make it line up with another hole, you put this down through there and you tap it, and then that lines up the hole really well. In this case, they just benefit me because I can find one that's the exact right size of this hole, but it's bigger than the bushing. And I'm going to go ahead and put the point down because it's not going to hit the bushing anyway. And then I'm just going to tap it. I've got a rubber mallet here, and I'm just going to tap it. I'm holding it in my hand between my fingers, and that's knocking them out of there. These things are really tight. I couldn't push them out. But a little bit of shock like that drives them right out. Just as a side note, my wife looked at that and says, that's impossible. So there you go. That's just a comment from an expert. It's impossible. Well, it might well be. We do have a problem because this truss rod is very big. It takes up almost all the wood. And wow, I mean, seriously, this is, I think, all time in 35 years, the worst neck break and repair that I'll ever have to do. That one I did on the Gibson guitar where I had to cut it all out and do a scarf joint was actually a piece of cake compared to this. I really honestly don't know how to fix this. I mean, part of me says just put it back together, glue it, and call it done. And honestly, I think that might be the best solution. I mean, if I tried to cut all this out, there's nothing left to cut out and there's nothing left to put back. That's the problem. There's just nothing to work with. And what's still here still matches up good. I'm beginning to think that's the only option, is just glue it like it is and call it done. I think on the Gibson, the reason I took it apart and did the scarf joint was there was nothing left. There wasn't anything there to glue to. They had already done it like 3 different times, or 2 different times I think, and I was the 3rd. And that's why I had to cut it all out. At least this one hasn't been attempted before. I say always try the easy thing first, the simple thing first. This is the simple, easy thing. If it doesn't hold, guess what? We can always go into it deep. But this won't cost much just to glue this back in place like it is, so I think that's the option I'm going with for now. You just have to do the best option you've got, and to me that's the best option I got right now, and it's the fastest, simplest option. So we're going to give it a shot and we'll see what happens. Well, after doing the analyzing here right on camera, as you saw it, I read the customer's note, and it says, I purchased this mandolin as is, as you see it. I know nothing of its tone or problems it may have. It is a top-of-the-line Loar copy from China. That's the only reason I'm sending it to you. I play church music and compete with a piano. No bluegrass. Mostly I play the notes. After you have a look, please give me a call with your recommendations. I'll give him a call and tell him what I recommend, and which is just to do the quick and dirty thing, which is glue it back. And I kind of think it'll be fine, because I really do have a lot of faith in the old Type Bond original. I think it'll hold it. But, you know, you got to think there's 8 strings pulling on that, and there's very little surface area. That's the problem. If there was more surface area, I'd be 100% confident. But because there's very little surface area, I'm only about 50-50 on whether this is really going to hold long term. I've got warm water here off camera, and I've got a little paintbrush, and I'm dipping it in the warm water, and I'm going to lightly dampen all of this. I'm not trying to soak it down. I just don't want the glue to have all the moisture sucked out of it, because we're really talking in grain, and all of these in grains are just like a soda straw, and they suck moisture right down. Because of the in grain, you know, mainly, I'm wetting everything down here just lightly. A slow cure on glue is generally better than a fast cure. My biggest problem with this is how I'm going to clamp it, and even as I sit here and think about it, I don't know how I'm going to clamp it. I really don't. Ordinarily, I've got a better guess on all this stuff, but on this one, whew, it's a toughie. Trying not to get the glue on the truss rod, but realistically, it's probably going to get on there, and I don't see any way that I could tape this off or help that in any way because of the tightness of everything. This is really a tough fix. Maybe the toughest one ever on a neck break for sure. But it's an easy fix that I'm going after, if that makes sense. Strangely enough, clamping it like that seemed to squeeze a lot of glue out of the joint. I'm pulling on the joint and it's coming together too, but I don't know of any way to clamp that. I took the clamp off, put more pressure on it with my hands, clamped the clamp back down, and a lot more glue squeezed out, so I feel pretty confident that that's as good as I'm going to get done on this job right here. Back on this Loar mandolin, it's been sitting overnight. I first thought it was going to work, but as I start moving this peg head around, I can feel it creaking, cracking like, and it ain't going to hold. Not with 8 strings on there. So I mean, it's pretty stout, and whoops, it's not that stout. There you go. I was putting some force on it to see if it would come loose. It looks like it broke loose just exactly where it broke loose before. So it didn't create any additional problem. I was hoping that would be the case, because I thought we're going to have to take it apart again in order to do something different if the customer wants to pursue it. You know, I try the simple solution first. That's what you should try. But I could tell right away it wasn't going to work. See, ladies and gentlemen, there is very little meat here. You can see how thin that wall is, how thin this wall is. That, you know, there's just nothing left. I'm going to talk to the customer and see if he wants me to try major surgery. But I have a feeling this may be one we're just going to have to give up on. I talked to the customer on this, and he's willing to spend up to around $400 to fix it. I tell you, that's on the borderline whether I can do that or not. It just, you know, it just boils down to time. I basically charge $1 a minute. Can I do it in 400 minutes is really what it amounts to. And I'm not sure I can. As you know, I've got lots of confidence in Titebond. I didn't have much confidence in this job, though, ungluing it, no matter what you glue it with. And the reason is because it broke kind of on a curl. There's almost no wood left, and it's almost all in-grain wood. Now, in-grain, if you don't know what that is, it's be like taking 2 long boards, butting them together on the end, and gluing that and expecting it to hold. It just isn't going to hold. I don't care what kind of glue you use. Partly because those end fibers have holes in them, and you know, it creates a shear point. It just doesn't hold anything. That's what we had here, and that's why I wrenched on it to make sure, because I knew, you know, I mean, I didn't want to put strings on here and have it hold and then break in shipping or break when it got to the customer. You know, that's just not how I do things. And I knew it just needed to be wrenched on pretty good, so I did that, and it popped loose. But I pretty much knew it was going to. All right, so how could we fix this? Well, you know, because you want to try to save this, the first natural option is you think, well, let's cut back under here and save all this. But cutting back under there, you know, while that's a good way to do it in one way, there's no meat left here because that's all broke out up here, see? So, you know, you'd have to come way up here to do anything. If we cut from the top down, we've got more meat left, and we could have a long plane here that we'd have something to glue to. And I feel confident that it would hold on a long plane, flat plane like that. But then how do you connect it back up to this? So you'd have a long flat plane here. We'd have to come back here somewhere on the neck and cut a long flat taper here. So basically you're just creating some very strange looking scarf type joint. It's about the only way I can think to do it. And the problem with that is you still got to deal with this goofy truss rod, and it's so big around. It's 3/8 of an inch almost, which is quite large when you don't have a lot of room there to begin with. It's pretty close to 3/8 of an inch. Another option is go deeper, take the whole fretboard off, get rid of the truss rod, put a solid neck up through there. A lot of work. But I could make it hold that way too, I'm pretty sure. But the problem with taking off the fretboard is you got all this binding along here, and then you can see there's even a detailed binding under that. And you're going to break a lot of that, chip it. The finish is going to chip and look nasty along here. Then you got all that to fix. I don't think I could do that in 400 minutes. I don't think so. Not possible. The hybrid of the idea, and I don't like this, and nobody out there is going to like this either, I don't think, is to cut a long taper back here. Cut a long taper here like I already talked about. Somehow match those 2 tapers up with wood and basically just cut the truss rod off. You know, on this taper here, more or less just cut the truss rod off. Just leave it in there, just, you know, be a dead truss rod. That, as bad as it sounds, almost sounds like the best option to me, because at least I'd be able to get a solid neck on this that I think would hold. I don't necessarily think you always need a truss rod. Everybody seems to want to play with them, but for the most part, more people do damage with their truss rod than they do good, in my opinion. Well, I'm not going to just jump into this. I'm going to think about it for a little while. But it is going to be a tough one, whatever I decide to do. The reason I was thinking about cutting the angle out here too is also this stuff is damaged, and we could just cut it from like these two bottom holes at a long angle down, a flat angle, and just get rid of all that damaged stuff there. And then it'll just be black, so the logo would only be from here up, and you wouldn't see this part of the logo anymore, or the inlay, I guess I should say. And I don't see as that's a big deal in the scheme of things here. Just having it black from there on down would be fine, because recreating the inlay and all that's just way beyond scope of this. Just seems like seconds ago on video, but it's been several days, maybe even a week or two. I talked to the customer a couple of times about this mandolin. He's concerned because he doesn't want this to be the very first instrument that comes in the shop I can't fix. Well, let me assure you, there has never been an instrument come in the shop I couldn't fix. Even if it got ran over by a tank and was crushed as small as toothpicks, you can fix it if you want to. If you want to spend the time and the money and the effort, you can fix it. That's not the issue. I can fix this. If I had to, I could take it completely apart, build a brand new neck, put it on there. No problem. I could do it. The real question is, can you do it efficiently enough, cost effectively enough to make it worth doing? Now, this is a Loar mandolin. I don't know what this one costs, but I think it's one of the top of the line Loar mandolins. So let's just assume it's a $1,000 mandolin. I don't know, and I'm not about to look it up because it don't matter to me. I probably mentioned this already, but it's an LM 700 VS. Okay, but I believe I remember him telling me it was one of the top of the line Loar mandolins. So let's say it's a $1,000 mandolin. Pick your number, it doesn't matter to me. Can I fix this cost effectively? You know, would you want to put $500 in it? Would you want to put $1,000 in it? For $1,000, I can fix it. There's no question about it. But do you want to fix it for $500? Well, obviously he's wanting to fix it as cheap as possible. He bought it in this condition. Now the next problem is, can I get this truss rod out? If I could get the truss rod out, that would be another big easy thing. I can't. That truss rod is a two-way truss rod. It's down in there somehow. I can turn it either direction, but it gets tight in either direction and it stops, working, or it doesn't really stop working, but you're going to break something. So it's not going to come out of there. It's not going to unscrew out of there or anything like that. Well, he still wants it fixed if I can fix it. And that's why I've given it several days trying to think about it. Sure, I could take the fretboard off. I could take this truss rod out maybe. But that's a whole bunch more work. You got to understand, that's a lot more work. You think, it's not that big a deal. Well, it is that big a deal. I mean, there's all that finish along here. You've got that binding along here, that little extra little under binding, if you will, and it's all there and it's all tight and nice. You ain't going to get that apart and it's going to be tight and nice. It's going to be ugly and nasty. And so, do you want to go through all that crap and fix all that crap in addition to fixing the neck? Well, I don't. And it's just not worth that kind of money, in my opinion, to do that. Well, I've kind of decided to take pity on the customer and just go ahead and fix this, whether it's cost effective or not. I had an idea of just sawing this off, sawing it right through the truss rod, and sawing this off, and I'm still going to do that, but I'm not going to go ahead and saw it through the truss rod. I've decided I'm just going to go ahead and take the fretboard off. It's a lot more work. It's going to tear up this edge. It's going to create more problems than it's worth. I already know that. It's going to take more time than it's worth. I already know that. I'm just gonna, help the guy out. That's all I can tell you. I don't know why I've chosen to do this, especially as busy as I am, but I have. So I'm really heating it up hot, just hoping by the grace of God I'll get lucky and it won't be that hard to take apart. Although I already know it's not going to be easy. When that finish goes up over that like it is here, it's just hard to get loose. I'm going to try cracking it without cutting the finish first. That'll probably be a mistake. But I'm going to try it because you just never know. Sometimes you get lucky. And it would just be cool to get lucky. So where's it stuck? I thought I had it all the way. Must have re-glued itself somewhere. Yeah, I'd say that was white glue. It probably was Titebond or something like Titebond. Which is fine. There you go. On camera you see it come right apart with Titebond. And it didn't create any tear out. It didn't create any real problem. I'm just admitting that it was probably harder than it would have been with hide glue. But it wasn't anywhere near impossible. And actually, by heating that up first and cutting that first, it didn't really do too bad a job. And I don't remember if I've ever tried that before, to be honest with you. And I know that sounds stupid in all these years I've been doing this, but I typically score it first and then heat it. Well, let me tell you, heating it first and getting it really hot and then scoring it was a lot easier. So there you go. There's a new tip that I just learned. I've probably done that before and just forgot, to be honest, because my memory is only about a 1/4 inch long these days. Are we going to get lucky and get the truss rod out? Because that would be really cool. Well, it's moving. Not moving easy, but it's moving. It's at least moving. That's a good sign. Probably going to have to get a real pry bar here. So we'll start with a screwdriver. That's a real pry bar for me. Wow. Pushing it forward, it's not coming up. I was hoping it would come up. There, it's starting to come up. There we go. We're getting under it now. Yeah, we just pulled her out of there now. It appears to have been stuck in there. This plastic tape around it or something was holding it in there a little bit. It's got glue down in there. That's what it is. The glue seeped down in there, and it really shouldn't have glue down in there. And you can see there's plenty of glue that went down inside there, and that shouldn't happen. And that's why that was hard to get out up at that upper end, and it tore the plastic. Otherwise, that would have just came right out. Oh well, just one more thing. Hey, we can fix it now. I'm not even worried about fixing it now. The only thing I'm worried about now is, just trying to get the right angles and that kind of thing with the joints, and that's tedious, but that's nowhere near impossible. We just got to get it done. I just went and got my neck side profile pattern just to see if it looked like it was about the same profile. I mean, you can't really lay it on there. You can just kind of lay it next to it and look at it, and it looks pretty close. It doesn't look exactly the same, but at least I could use this and I think we'd be fine. I'm going to have to use a pretty radical fix on this. As we've already noted, this end's just a wreck, and the inlay's already damaged, so I'm just calling this part of the inlay, a loss. I'm just going to leave this bottom inlay, but I'm going to start right below the inlay and angle down, and that's the angle I'm going to cut. I'm going to go make me some kind of a jig on my bandsaw to hold this square and cut that angle. Well, this is about the 4th or 5th iteration of this jig. I went to this big block of wood. It's square on this side and this side. This side here not so much, but it doesn't really matter. I just shimmed this out to this block so that I could hold this square to the table. I'm going to show you the other side of this. I've got a shim in here too to tilt it a little more, to give me a little more angle. Now we'll go around to the other side and show you what it looks like. Now you can see on this side, I've already got this attached to the block. I actually put a screw through this hole and a screw through this other hole up here behind the blade that you can't see. The way the blade should come in contact with the peg head just after this last inlay, or at least that's what I'm hoping. And you know, I've got the peg head centered this way too, tilted this way, you know, so that it's centered. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Well, I was kind of hoping it was going to come down in here a little further, but this will work. We'll make it work. So after the bandsaw cutting episode, we're left with this. Now that's a long, flat piece of wood, and that's solid. I mean, I can make something stick to that, I think. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I will tell you that you can see the quality of the wood they used there. Of course, it was covered up. You never see it, but there's a knot in the wood right there. So there you go. That's what happens when you buy instruments that aren't the Rosa mandolin. Just kidding, just kidding. You know, here's another, you know, it was probably the guy's first day on the job. He says, take a router, route this channel out a little bigger right there so that this end of this will go in there. Well, he got pretty happy with the router, and it's a pretty big area. You know, you can see here how narrow the channel is, and up in here, and then of course he went to a lot of the depth. And even going to that depth up into there is probably what made this so thin around here and caused it to break out. So now, how do I fix that? Well, I don't know for sure yet. Everything's a, you know, work in progress. I'm wanting to keep my reference here of where the fretboard attached, and it feels like it goes right back in place pretty good. It really does feel like it goes right back into place there. I think I'm in the exact right place. It just feels like it locks right in. So what I'm going to do is, for reference purposes, I'm going to put a pencil mark across the front of that so I know that that's, I don't want to get rid of anything behind that pencil mark. It's not going to be easy. Even this is not going to be easy. We may have to put a different kind of truss rod in this, because this truss rod is eating up all the space, because you see it's a really tall, it's tall this way, and this piece sits down below the rest of the rod, which even makes more space. So, you know, maybe he got a little happy with the router, but on the other hand, it looks like he had to do it. The question is, how do I cut enough of this away to make this solid? And the truthful answer is, I don't know. I really don't. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I'm tempted to just go to the bandsaw and just eyeball it. I'll tell you what I think I might do. As a matter of fact, I think this is what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to saw it off square here behind my pencil mark so that the pencil mark stays. Just saw it off square. Then I think I'm just going to take it to my belt sander and just belt sand it down, and that way I can control it. Because this whole thing, trying to hold it in a jig and the whole bit, is just harder than you would think. I mean, if you had the right setup, it'd be no problem. But I don't have that right setup, and it takes a long time to create it. And I think I can just cut that off, go to my belt sander, and sand me the angle that I really want here. Well, friends, they don't teach you this method in woodshop class, and it's for a very good reason. Do not do this at home. What could you do with that now? The answer is, it ain't going to be simple, I'll admit, but I can fix that, I think. And it'll be fine. I'm going to at least clog up this end of the truss rod hole. This, from here down, I'm going to make this solid again. And we're going to put a different kind of truss rod in this later, and we'll figure out a new way to do it, because this truss rod just ate up too much meat in this area. But that worked real good. I got a good flat scarf joint, a long scarf joint, and once we fill this in, it's a real solid scarf joint. So I'm happy with that. Well, after grinding this off, I've been giving it some thought of how I'm going to mate up these two pieces, and it ain't easy. So I took my pattern here and I drew it onto this cardboard. It's not real hard cardboard. I wish it was a little harder actually. And I'm going to line it up. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but that's just, sorry about that. That's just the way it is. If I had one more hand, this would be a piece of cake. But I don't have that other hand, and unfortunately I need that hand a lot, but I never have it. I'm just going to do the best I can at trying to mark my angle across here. Well, that's not much of a mark, but I think it's enough that I can extend it across there. Okay, so there's the angle I have ground across there. And just for a sanity check, I just want to look at that and see, does it look like the angle? Not really. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It looks like it goes further up there. But that's a good thing, I guess. I don't know, it's not too bad. Keep in mind, we're making the piece above this. This is the piece that exists down here. So we're going to make the piece above it. Okay, so now I have to get this piece lined up, and in order to do that, the paper wasn't long enough, so I'm going to try this option here. You know, nothing's going to be absolutely perfect about this, okay? I mean, we're just doing the best we can with what we got to work with. My thought is that about there is about right. It's pretty close. So, can I get rid of the paper and have it about where I want it? And it looks like I can. So now I'm going to, it looks like right at the corner of the paper is where that came out, and down here about's where that came out. So, you know, we'll leave a little bit of extra meat on there and call that it. So this weird shaped piece is what we're making. And it gets weirder because of the sides too, but right now, that's what we're making. Now, how in the heck do we make that? Well, we start by cutting it out. And once again, I'm going to leave it a little proud because you can always go smaller. Smaller is easy. There you go. Now, see, it's not that hard. That's all we got to make right there. No big deal. It's pretty simple, really. When you think about it, that's not hard to make. What we're trying to do is make this come flat all the way across to this, see? And so that looks like that might do it. Conversely, on this side, we're trying to make this come out about like so. And we got a lot of extra there, but that's just the way it is. This is what we're going to start with, and hopefully we can whittle it down to become a mandolin neck. I've got this block of curly maple here, which will match what we have, at least in terms of the kind of wood. It probably won't match exactly because this is very high grade curly maple. It is quarter sawed, meaning that the grain is running perpendicular down through this, which is very good. The widest place we need it is about 2.5 inches. I have the fence set at 2 5/8, so that'll give us 120 thousandths there extra. So now I want to go, before I make any mistakes, I want to go check my pattern and check the mandolin and make sure I glue this on in the right orientation. I don't think I can screw that up, but I want to make sure that I don't screw that up. Okay, it's time to do one of those sanity checks that I do, and that is to line up everything just to make sure that it's going to work the way you think it's going to work. And I line this up, and sure enough, this angle here goes into that angle, and that works good. This angle here goes into the top there, and that looks good. It looks like we're going to have enough wood and everything's going to work. What we do now is I'll glue my template down to this block of wood here. This side here has been surfaced, it's smooth. I'm going to glue it to this side, and I'm using Elmer's glue stick here, and I tell you what, these glue sticks, in my opinion, are the best glue sticks out there. I've tried every glue stick that I could find in Rollo, Missouri, at least. Never been happy with any of them until I went with the Elmer's, which you would think would be the cheap one. I think they are cheaper, but they are better. I'm telling you, they're the best, especially for this kind of woodworking stuff where you're gluing something to wood. It sticks really good. I also use it on all my envelopes that aren't self-sealing. It's really good. The pattern is glued to the top. I've got this bottom edge and this edge square, and that's about as good as you can do with something like this. And so now I'm going to go ahead and try to cut this pattern out. I'm going to just barely leave the line, but just barely. Well, there you go. That's what she looks like, all profiled out. Now, I think that's going to match pretty good, but we'll just have to go test it to see. Air conditioner's on. I'm sorry about the noise, but it's pretty hot. We're going to line it up like this and show you what it looks like. Can you see the mandolin in there now? Can you see the new neck in there? Well, it ain't easy to see, I'll have to admit. But it's in there. Now we just got to get it out. There's the profile view. Of course, I'm not holding it perfect, and it keeps sliding because of all the angles. It's going to be a tough glue up because, you know, when you do something that steep and you squeeze it together, they slide apart, see? So it's not an easy glue up, really. And I've sanded this, and so that's slick as it can be. And so it doesn't want to stay there. May have to put little tiny pins in it or something. I want to tell you, to be perfectly honest with you, there's a problem with the flatness here. This actually drops off by about, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch maybe at that. So what I'm doing is I'm leaving this high here by about a 32nd, and I'm going to taper that down to this. So at the end, it'll still be slightly down, but just barely. And, you know, it is what it is. And I'm not going to make the part over again. I just don't feel like I can invest that much more time in it. And the other problem is this is so slick and so steep of an angle that you can't clamp it. And especially once you get glue in there, it's just going to slide apart like that. I'm going to use my brad trick, which I don't really want to do because there's not a lot of meat here, but it'll be fine. And I'm going to do it right here. I'm taking the brad, I've cut it off, and I put it in the drill, and I'm going to just use it to drill my starter hole right here. And I might as well just drill the other hole with the same brad, I guess. Okay, and then take the brad out of there and put it in there, and then I'm just going to tap it in my hand like this lightly, just enough to get it to hold. It's not going to be perfect. And then I'll tap the other one in there. You know, I'm not trying to drive it through, I'm just trying to make it stick. And then I'm going to cut them off very, very, very short. As short as I can. And that still leaves them sticking up just a hair. Yeah. And then I'm going to test fit this. I've drawn a center line down this, and I'm kind of looking down the center of the top here just to eyeball it close. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer we get it, the better I like it. And then I'm just going to press on that, I hope, and get those points to make an indentation in this part, and they did. That may be all I really have to do. I may be able to just clamp it like that because that wood's, I think it's going to be that soft anyway. You know, I think I can. I think I can just clamp it right there like that. In fact, I may move it up just a hair more and just clamp it right there. They're just barely sticking out. They're just there to keep it from sliding. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's get some glue on this thing. Time to quit procrastinating and just get her done. Decided I want to glue up this side first, and then I can line up the long part to the neck with the peg head a little easier, I think. That's the plan, and that's the way we're going, whether it's the right plan or not. I don't really want a ton of glue on this. It's a very perfectly flat surface, so it's going to mostly squeeze out anyway. I just want to make sure I get perfect coverage. I don't want a bare spot anywhere. Same way with this here. And this is just going to be, well, I think I'll just kind of eyeball it and just pencil it in here, because there's no point in, might as well just get the glue in the right area. There's no point in putting it everywhere. Okay, I think that's good. Now we'll just try to line her up best we can. And we will apply the clamps. I'll just put this one in the center first to kind of get things holding. I think we're lined up pretty well, and I think everything's okay. Alright, I'm going to go get a number of more clamps and small clamps and leather and start clamping it all around here. Well, I want to tell you, I did that off camera, not because I felt like I should, but just because I was in the middle of a problem. It just wouldn't cooperate at all, and I just had to get it done. So what I did was, in addition to those two little brads I put in there, I actually put two brads through the bottom two holes of the peg head too, to keep it from sliding into this piece. And even with that, it wanted to slide bad. And I finally think I got it stabilized, or at least I think I do. I gotta be honest, it went down flush. I hope it's good enough. Man, it's gonna be what it is. I mean, gee whiz, I really tried hard, and it just kept sliding, and the pins wouldn't hold it. And I should have probably made the slightly longer pins in this case, because that really has a lot of pressure. This actually feels perfectly flush right now, which I didn't want that. I wanted this to be above the peg head. Hoping the glue gets tacky enough to hold it here pretty soon, because I'm afraid it's going to keep sliding down. Matter of fact, it's sliding down. It's not going to work. I'm going to have to do it over. Bummer. Golly, I just don't like this, because it's getting down below it. I can feel it. What a pain in the neck. I never thought that would be that hard. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but that hard? No, I didn't think that. Now it's glued. It won't come loose. Probably should have just left it, I guess, but I just don't like that. I'm going to pull these really, really short brads, if I can get them to pull, and put longer brads in there. I think that's my problem. No good deed goes unpunished. There you go. I got the little short one out. Got that one out. Alright, so we're going to put longer brads in here. I'm not going to cut them off quite so short this time. Leave them stick up longer, but the problem with that is I'm going to have to drill them into the other part, and that won't be easy either. Going to have to wash the glue off and start over. Well, that seems much better. The holes themselves are even holding it together now, so we're going to try that again and hope for the best. My goodness. I sure hope it holds this time, because this is no fun. It's slipping on an angle. It's twisting. Golly. Golly, 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 golly. Man, I've never had anything fight me this much on a clamp. Gee whiz. It just must be the perfect angle to suck. That's the best thing best way I can explain it. Holy mackerel, does it not want to stay where it's at. I mean, when you put 2 steel pins in there, you would think that would keep it from moving, but it sure don't. It just slides them around. Just pushes the wood grain out of the way. I'm just going to tighten this one up just slightly tight. I can't get it as tight as I want it. I'm just going to have to let it sit there and do its thing, and however it turns out, it just turns out. Man, I've never had anything fight me that hard on clamping, ever. Well, it's been sitting about an hour and 45 minutes or so, and we're going to take it apart now because take the clamps off of it so we can move on. It's not going to go anywhere. It looks tedious, to be perfectly honest with you, but I think it's going to be fine. I'm just curious how flat we are. Probably not crazy flat. Yeah, you can see that I'm running at a little bit of an angle. If you put it on the white there, you know, it probably should be a little bit more like that. But by the time I cut this front off of here and taper it back, it's going to be pretty close. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty close. And it's not going to be real noticeable. You'd have to be looking for it. What I'm wanting to do now is hold it on here so that I can mark the other measurements on here. Looks like a decent angle back to the peg head and everything, so I think we're in pretty good shape. Got my peg head overlay that I use as my template laying on here, and it's not a perfect match by any stretch, but on the other hand, it's not too far off either, and it's a little bigger than what I need, which is actually good. I can mark it off here and use that to, you know, as my outside perimeter. If I cut to those lines, then I'll be plenty big, or I should be. Well, we'll cut outside those lines just to be sure. And then we've got it bringing down like so. I've got my center line on here, and it appears to be pretty close. This kind of helps me line up a little bit. Looks pretty good right there. I think I'm just going to mark it on the outside of this. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and saw that out, and you can start to see how it's starting to look like it's supposed to look. Well, I think you can see that I've got this all chucked up here. Actually, this piece of wood isn't as flat as I thought it was. It's kind of rocky. So I guess I'm going to run that through my joiner first and get the bottom of this flat and have to reset all that up again. Well, it's starting to look a little more like a mandolin neck. Well, this is not perfectly flat for some reason, so I'm going to, it's got just a little bit of a bow in it, and I'm going to just see if I can knock a little bit of that bow out by hand here. I guess getting it hot, sanding it on that hot sander probably caused it to bow a little bit. Probably going to call that good. Just trying to tell if the peg head looks square to the body, and I would say it does. Pretty square. It may lean a little bit to the treble side, if anything. Yeah, it's pretty close. It's, you know, it's probably not perfect, but it's pretty close, and it's not enough to worry about. Before I glue this patch on, I want to explain the strength in this. There is more strength here than it looks like. I know this looks like a thin piece, but the grain is going vertical through this piece. It's going this way. That kind of grain is very difficult to bend, and it doesn't break easy either. Had I turned it slab where the grain was going this way, then it could break pretty easily. But this way, it is very, very strong. And I think it's going to be perfectly strong. I don't think it's going to ever break again. We're just going to get her lined up here. More than likely I'm going to have to pin this also, but I hope not. I would like to do it without pins, but you know, if I have to, I have to. As a matter of fact, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and do it because I'm pretty sure I will. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to. And I'm just going to mark it on here. I think I'm going to put the pins on this piece. rather than not do it and wish I would have, I'll just go ahead and do it now. It looks like that worked real good for lining it up. We're going to glue it up and clamp her down. In this case, because this is a rough piece of wood anyway, it doesn't really matter if I use leather or not. So I'm going to just skip the leather deal because it's so hard to control. And I'm just going to lightly tighten this down to get it snug in place. And I'm going to do the best I can to see if it's lined up, and that's going to be hard with the clamp in the way. Doesn't look too bad right there. The overall length should be around 27.5, and it's right on the money on that, so we should be good there. I think we're pretty good. Going to put this clamp on down here. I put this block here because this was split and opened up, and the clamp wouldn't span that big wide crack there very easily. Here it should span the crack pretty easily. I don't think I need another block, though I think I have one, so why not just use it. So we got them on each end and then the middle. And I don't think it could be any better. You might see there how it's looking. And now all we got left to do is to carve it back. The hardest part about carving it back is not messing up the other finish or the other part of the neck. In this particular case, I don't know that I'm going to care about that. I think I might just take the whole finish off. So I got to think on that. I usually think about these things as I get to them. I don't plan too far ahead because your plans will change anyway.